Hey guys, it's John. Welcome to Volume 2 here of Youth Leader Uncut. In this episode, we're going to be taking a look here at one of my previous sermons here, where I touch on 3 questions here from a really good book that I recently read. First being, can Jesus be true for you and not for me? Can we be good without God? And is the Bible reliable? And I really just touch at surface level of each one of those questions. If you'd like a future episode where we go a little bit deeper into one of these questions, please let us know in the comment section below. I hope you guys enjoy this message. Please let me know what you think in the comment section below, and I hope you guys have a great time watching it. Enjoy.
The remainder of our Truth or Dare series here. And I just want to start off with this here. Who likes to be asked questions?
Me.
All my extroverts should raise your hands right now. I should see hands up if you're an extrovert. We know we love to be asked questions, love to have some good chatty moments. But sometimes we don't like asked questions, depending on what they may be, because it makes us a little bit uncomfortable. It challenges our thinking a little bit. But in uncomfortable moments, in those uncomfortability, we find space to grow, and space where we can grow with our relationship with God.
Yeah.
And today I want to prepare you as we are going to go into, you guys get the triple header Sunday, and you don't just get one question, don't just get 2 questions, but you get 3 questions this Sunday. And we're going to go into some great truths here about what we see with Jesus and what we see with Christianity. So the first one, let's get kicked off here. First question here is, can Jesus be true for you, but not for me? And maybe you have a friend at your school who's been saying that to you. It's like, Jesus is good for you, but please just don't share about with Jesus with me. Jesus is cool for you, but I got my own thing. I got my good vibes going on over here. I don't want you to disrupt it. Or I got my crystal energy. My crystal's over here. Don't disrupt that. We very much live in a culture, especially over the past 10-something years, that's been going in a trend of it's okay for you to be Christian. Just don't share Jesus with me. I want to do what I want to do. Don't talk to me about what you are doing at all. Very much self-centered here. Or in other words, it's okay to believe in God, but it's arrogant and ignorant to say that one religion is true or that Jesus is true for everybody because you're starting to get into my way of life and what I want to do at that point. Who's ever seen a coexist sticker before? Maybe you're driving, especially for my high schoolers who have their driver's license. Maybe you're driving, you've seen a coexist sticker before in your life.
We just saw one today, like
there you go. That's the Holy Spirit speaking right there. But I have something I was kind of thinking about here with coexist. There's a little bit of a harsh truth and a harsh reality between coexist. Coexist is very much a mindset of kind of get off my case type answer. I want to do what I want to do. Don't try to tell me about your religion because I don't care. It's very much in that mindset. However, if we just say coexist, or if you're in the mindset of coexist, in reality, all religions cannot be equally true at the same time in the same space because they all contradict each other at some point in time, where it's the role of God, where it's the role of Jesus, where it's the role of what God does. All of those have contradictions in there of saying, even just looking at Islam, for example, and Allah in Islam. Allah is a very vengeful God in Islam. If you've ever taken a look at the Quran, he's very vengeful, does not value human life the same way that the God of Christianity values human life. He doesn't come down, he doesn't send his son at all. It's very much you have to work towards him in order to have that relationship with him. Whereas our God in Christianity, he came down, he gave us the gift of Christ in that time, in that moment, and gave us the gift of salvation. The only religion we see that does that. And it's very important that we keep that mindset here. Who's ever seen the movie Titanic before?
I watched last night.
I love hearing all these connections. There's a scene in the Titanic I want to mention here in particular where Rose is talking to Thomas Andrews here, and he tells her that the ship's going to go down. It's going to sink. And she's left in a very peculiar kind of spot here in the movie. And what if I told you that the message of Jesus is true? It's like we're all sailing on the Titanic here a little bit. To where the people on the Titanic think that everything's good. They don't know the ship's going to sink at all. They're just walking around, eating some nice food, just going around, listening to some nice music. And we're in a similar situation to Rose here in that movie, to where we know the ship is going to sink. We know that we're not perfect. We need salvation. And the people on the boat, they don't know that's going on at all. And we're put in a very particular spot here like she is. She could tell everyone that, okay, the ship's going to sink, we need to get to our lifeboats. And we're in a situation, too, to where we have people in our influence who we know that are ignoring Jesus, that are just like the people on the Titanic, that they're just walking around thinking everything's good and dandy. They don't know what's going to come once their lives end at all. And we need to be going into the mindset of how can I talk to people in my influence and get them to those lifeboats, get them to full life in Jesus. And that's very important for us here, as Jesus even tells us here in Matthew 28:19 here, to go and make disciples of all nations. So not just when it feels convenient for me to make disciples, not when there's just a good, easy opportunity for it. We always need to be looking for opportunities. And it's hard, if I'm being honest, it's hard sometimes. There's people in your influence, like even the people I mentioned earlier, that are like, that person, I already kind of know what is going to give me their reaction. They're probably going to yell at me, tell me off, saying, just take that Jesus stuff, go to your corner with that all. Leave me alone. And it's hard because we want to go. We want to share the love of Jesus, but we have to fight through the fear of the reaction. We cannot let the fear of the reaction dictate where we share Jesus with that person or not. And that's a very big reality, especially in our day and age and the way culture has been trending. Very, very important here. And really kind of wrapping up this question here, it's really offensive and unloving not to tell others about Jesus. So it's the same thing I mentioned earlier, that we are very much in a similar spot as Roses. So if we're not telling them the ship's going down and that they need Jesus, they're going to go down. There's going to be no lifeboat for them at all. The lifeboat's still going to be there, but we need to tell them about that lifeboat being the salvation and the goodness that is found in Jesus. We need to tell them about that. And just as a fish needs to swim, we need to share our faith with others. So in order for us, even kind of individually here, for us to live our full lives in Jesus, we need to be able to share. It's as much as it is for fish to swim water, as much as it is for us to breathe. In order for us to get to that full life that's just, we need to be actively sharing our faith with others. So I know for me, if I go a little bit of a while without sharing others about Jesus, I feel like I just have all this built up energy. It's like, almost kind of like the Energizer Bunny at times. So like you have so much energy, and it's just so built up, and you're not sure how you're going to use it. And it's so important that we go and we share that energy, share that message of Jesus with others. And we should go with the mindset that we should respect others. We shouldn't be rude or jerks towards them at all and say, well, if you don't know Jesus and you don't give your life to him right now, you're going to hell. We should not go with that mindset, because that's not showing the love that is Jesus and the same love that Jesus has shown to us. That's not showing it at all. We should be actively listening to the Holy Spirit for opportunities, and he's going to give you opportunities. The question is, are you going to act on it? Are you going to act on it in that moment? Or are you going to get in the way of that moment, saying, that's the person who I know is going to shout at me and tell me to go in my corner about Jesus. I really don't want to have to share it with them today. But it's really amazing to see how the Holy Spirit is going to open up opportunities for you in your life to go and to share others about Jesus. And I want you to reflect on this here. Are you afraid to tell others in your influence about Jesus?
Yeah.
Are you afraid to tell others about Jesus and to share your testimony or share the goodness of Jesus and what he's done in your life with others? And to be honest, I have moments that I'm like that too, where especially with those people, it's like, I know how they say they really hate religion, they hate God. I don't really want to go talk to that person about Jesus. And that's when the Holy Spirit kind of nudges me a little bit and says, okay, I need to go over and I need to talk to that person about Jesus, regardless of what the fear of the reaction may be. As we go into our second question here, can't we just be good without God? So now that we've talked about Jesus and we've talked about how he is true and how he can be for us and how he's true in the sense of our objectivity and how he is our standard, can't we just be good without God? Can we just do what we want? And As a culture, we've been really stuck in this mindset of, oh yeah, I'm just gonna be the best good person I can be. And we try to do it without God. We're just thinking, oh yeah, I'll just walk around my day. I'm a good person. And we've been talked about this in a few months back ago. Are we good or are we naturally born good? Pastor Matt did an awesome job talking about that. And the truth is, we're not born good. We're born really bad, actually. And we need the goodness that is Jesus to help us in our everyday lives. Take up our daily cross, as he mentioned. And who's ever seen the movie Wreck-It Ralph? I know it came out. You're just going to get flooded with all these comparisons here. Just keep them coming. But the movie Wreck-It Ralph kind of starts with, we see the character Ralph. He's a quote-unquote villain in the movie. And he's going around, walking around, and he's in a game called Fix-It Felix Jr. He's the villain in the game. And he goes to this small group of other villains, and they say this kind of chant together, say, we are bad, and that is good. It is good that we are bad. Just kind of putting this mindset of, or expectation that our role is to be bad, and we're just fine with being bad. And the chant is a little bit silly if you watch the movie, but it really raises some important questions for us as well. For instance, what's the difference between good and evil? Who gets to decide what good and evil is in our lives? Is there even such a thing as good and evil to begin with? Or do we just get to decide for ourselves what good is and what evil is? And you might be thinking, surely, John, that's such a stupid question. Everybody knows what good and evil is. We know that good is just treating everyone equally, and bad is things like racism, conflict, starting wars, stuff like that. But really, it's not quite as cut and dry as that. And we can even look back to the time of Jesus. And there's an example that I was thinking about in our author, Rebecca McMorrin mentions too, is during the time of Christ, there were amphitheaters. Very much like our football games, especially if you went to Cooper went to the Georgia game yesterday. But if you go to a college, think about a college game, these are what our amphitheaters during the time of Jesus were like. The crowds were going crazy, yeah. And probably a lot louder than that. That was pretty weak. But they were cheering, and in essence, they were cheering for these fires to kill each other. It was pretty bad. It wasn't just, oh yeah, they're going to fight and they're just going to hit each other, and we're going to hope we score some points. No, the only way they scored points is if the other person died. That was the only way they were scoring points. And I want you to imagine, what if you went to a football game or to a sports game and someone died? What if you went to a sports game or and someone died? You may never want to go back to a football game or a sports game again because you may have that flashback each time in your mind. It's like, I'm not sure it's worth going through that memory again. Not sure I really want to go through that again. And back during that time, people didn't value human life the same way that we do in modern society. And we see what changed between then and now. Jesus is what changed between then and now. Jesus showed us the value of human life. Just as Sandy had mentioned last week, Jesus values all human life, regardless of what your race is, your background is, no matter what your family's socioeconomic status is. God loves you regardless. And Jesus showed us that all lives count, and we see this in multiple scriptures. We see this in Luke 10:25, verses 10, 25, verses 25 and 37. And Jesus shocked his hearers by telling a story where a Samaritan was a moral hero, which back then, no one liked Samaritan. That would be just like telling a Georgia fan a story about a Georgia Tech fan. They don't want to hear any story about a Tech fan at all. That was very much the same way, except imagine that but 10 times worse. They hated Samaritans. They wanted nothing to hear about Samaritans at all. And Jesus mentions them in a really important moral story. And Jesus shows that all lives matter in that story. Interesting enough, it's because of Jesus that what we view as good and bad have been deeply shaped by his teachings. So we even see the Roman Emperor Julian in the 4th century here. He was getting on to the Roman people at the time because he was saying that the Roman gods were bad. Or not so much the Roman gods were bad, but the Roman people were making the Roman gods look bad. But if you look at the values of the Roman gods, they didn't value people at all. They didn't value poor people. They didn't value sick people at all. They said, oh yeah, If you're not really wealthy, you can't donate a sacrifice to the Roman gods, you have no value at all. And he was getting on to them for that. It's like, why, compared to all these Christian people, why are they doing such great things in their community, and you guys can't do the same thing? Well, if you look at their value and their standards, it wasn't the same. Was not the same. And Jesus made all lives matter, including babies, sick people, poor people, and our enemies, which that's the toughest one for us, is our enemies. Realize that Jesus didn't just die for me, but he also died for my enemy as well. And we all have, if there's no God, there's no universal right and wrong at all. We could just all have different opinions. Most of us judge right and wrong and tell us what to do, which honestly, that sounds like a complete mess, a dumpster fire mess. If it was that way, to where we were having to keep going back and forth, especially what Sandy may view as right and wrong may not be completely exactly aligned with what I view as being right and wrong. And that's such an important thing when we think about the goodness that is God. And the basic moral standards by which most of us judge right and wrong today, whether you're Christian or atheist, regardless of what your religion is, ultimately came from Christianity and the teachings that were Jesus. Jesus showed us what was right versus wrong. He showed us the right thing to do is to go and lay our life down for our neighbor. He showed us what was wrong was going towards sexual immorality, trying to murder our neighbor. That's what we do not need to be doing. As far as understanding what's good versus good and bad. If we take that foundation away, what we are left with is we have no right and wrong, no evil, no good. In the end, our lives and actions don't matter at all. And a lot of religions, unfortunately, go with that mindset to where, you just go with the flow, you hope for the best and all. And if you view it very much in that mindset, you just lose it. You can't at all. Our last question here is, how can you believe the Bible is true? Ooh, John, did I hear you say that right? You're questioning the Bible in church? I'm not sure they're going to let him come up and touch a microphone again. I'm not sure at all. How can you question the Bible in church? All places too, because we talk so much about the Bible. But it's so important for us as Christians to be open, because questioning, as I mentioned at the very beginning, we don't grow, especially in those uncomfortable questions. If we don't accept it, if we don't listen here, we can't grow at all. We can't grow our relationship with God. In the movie Aladdin, here's another connection here. In the movie Aladdin, I'm not talking about the janky remake version with Will Smith and the remake. I'm talking about the good OG stuff right here. I'm talking about the good OG stuff here, the cartoon. So when he meets the genie for the first time here, Aladdin starts talking to himself and he says, "Am I talking to a smoking blue giant?" And Genie here, I'm not even trying to replicate Robin Williams' voice because I can't do it justice. But he says, "I'm not a giant, I'm a genie. There's a difference. Giants aren't real." What if I told you that some people ask that we view the Bible in the same way? View the Bible in the same way. That we don't view, that they ask us to view the Bible more as a mythical book or more as a good feelings book compared to the actual truth. And his response is funny, but it also raises some questions here too. What if I mentioned that part there? But let's lay out here some of the Bible's claims here first before we get kind of started here. First, the Bible was written thousands of years ago. It's an old book, being truthful, it's an old book. That doesn't take away from any of its fidelity at all. And second, it claims that God sent his son down to the world for people like you and me. He sent Jesus down. It claims that Jesus didn't just stay here on earth. He performed miracles. He was active while he was here on earth. And he was raised from the dead when he was resurrected. That he now lives with all Christians. And we need some serious evidence to believe that here. So as we go into the Bible, let's focus on Jesus himself, as Jesus himself is our center point in Christianity, not anything else. Jesus is our center point. Jesus is our center point here. And let's talk about what Jesus did even exist. Did Jesus even exist in the first part? Because if he didn't exist, then what we're talking about doesn't really matter at all. Jesus has to exist here in the sense here of us talking about it. So Jesus, every historian agrees, for the most part, that Jesus was a first century rabbi, a Jewish rabbi, and he was crucified by the Romans. That's all agreed upon for the most part. We see the four Gospels back that up, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, all confirm that for us. And what if I told you there's even evidence outside of the Bible? Evidence outside of the Bible for this as well. There's really early manuscript evidence as well, not biblical written, but historical text. And I wanted to show a picture of this, but I didn't quite have time to grab it. But there is a Bible museum, I think it's out in Dallas, Texas, I think off the top of my head. And they have some of these manuscripts, really old, barely put together manuscripts that show us evidence for the resurrection of Christ and also evidence for Jesus' existence as well, which is some pretty cool stuff. And even historians who do not believe in God at all agree that Jesus was a real person. Something else to consider is were the Gospels written too long after Jesus' death as well. And a disclaimer here is we don't have the original copies of the Gospels. We don't. And I would be foolish to tell you that we do and that you should just take it as it is. But that's not the truth. We have copies of copies. And sometimes people say because it's copies of copies that it's not necessarily true. But when these being copies of copies, we have far more manuscript evidence for the life of Jesus than we do for even the lives of people like Alexander the Great, who are a little bit more popular in history books, at least we've taken a look at history. And we talk about Jesus, a Jewish rabbi. Back during the time of Christ, people learned from word of mouth because people barely knew how to read and write during the time. Most people didn't. So how they learned is they walked around with their local Jewish rabbi. He memorized Torah, which is the Judaic text, our first 5 books of the Old Testament. And he would go around and recite Torah to them and talk to them about God. And Jesus continues this culture to in his own ministry as he picks 12 disciples along with lots of other followers who follow him and shares his goodness and shares the message of Jesus, shares the message of himself with them during that time. And a lot of this shows us here too, and Richard Bauckham here, who's a really cool doctor of philosophy, he showed us that these Gospels are based on eyewitness accounts. So, and eyewitness accounts are being able to go and to that person who saw it and ask them, hey, did Jesus or so-and-so actually did this or do this? And being able to say, yes, he did. I remember a few weeks ago, I was playing football with some of our middle school guys. And I hate to kind of embarrass them like this, but I pulled a pretty sick juke move out on them. And you may not believe it, but the last two, Truman and Blake, they're my eyewitnesses, and they can attest to that. Not Lamar Jackson nice, so I can't do myself pretty justice like that, but still pretty nice. But something to kind of finish up here as we get ready to wrap up is, when we continue to look at the questions here about the Bible's fidelity, a lot of it goes into the resurrection of Jesus. When we ask ourselves, was Jesus actually resurrected? Let's look at the effects of what happened afterwards. A group of disciples that was scared and scattered and really disoriented after his death were able to get their stuff together and were able to go and share the message, not just in that particular region, but spread it across the entire world, is really remarkable. And it's just really interesting to see here. And some people may even question, why did they share it? Could they be doing it just to gain fame or gain wealth, talking about the message of Jesus? But a lot of these people were killed for their faith. They were martyred. That's the harsh truth of it. They got these nice mansions on the coast of the Mediterranean Sea and just were able to live their nice lives. No, they were martyred. And a lot of people try to use that as far as against it. But really, it's more proof that that did happen, that Jesus' resurrection, because if you believe something so passionately enough that you're willing to die for it, that's only going to even back the claim even more. And back it even more. And Jesus talked about this in what we see in the Gospels here. Is the Bible meant to be read literally? This is a big question here that I've heard quite a bit. And there's parts of the Bible that are meant to be read literally. While there's also parts of the gospel and the parts of the Bible that Jesus mentions that are parables that are more metaphorically. For example, the story of the Good Shepherd. Was Jesus literally a sheep shepherd in that story? No, he was not literally a sheep shepherd. He was a shepherd in the sense of us being the sheep and him willing to die for us. And we even see this in the story about he says that he is the bread And He's the bread for us in our lives. Is He literally a piece of bread? No, He's not literally a piece of bread. Metaphorically showing that just as it's vital for us to breathe, we need to consume His Word on a daily basis. And when taking a look here at the Bible, it should be read literally. This is not a simple yes or no answer and say, oh yeah, you should definitely take everything literally that we see in the Bible. I would encourage you to go through, read your Bible. There's parts and lots of parts that you can tell that this is a little bit more metaphorically compared to others, especially the parables that we see in the Gospels of Jesus. And as we wrap up here, non-Christian sources from the first century also confirm the identity of Jesus being a Jewish rabbi here, who was crucified on the cross. It took a miracle to turn a handful, or really more than 2 handfuls of disciples to go and spread the word of Jesus. As we recap our questions here today, Jesus is the truth, and we should respect and share Him with others. The teachings of Jesus are our standards for good and evil. And that the Bible is true as well. So if you take anything out into your week, I encourage you, go look into